You do nothing all day, Margaret. Watch my kids while I travel, my daughter-in-law said, sliding a pale blue folder across the dinner table like she was handing me a work assignment. For a moment, the only sound in my son's dining room was the low hum of the refrigerator and the soft clink of my fork touching the edge of my plate. Ashley did not lower her voice. She did not look embarrassed. She sat across from me in her cream sweater, her blonde hair tucked neatly behind one ear, her phone face up beside her wine glass, waiting for me to accept what she had already decided. My son Daniel sat next to her with his shoulders rounded, staring at the roasted chicken I had brought over that afternoon because Ashley had said she was too tired to cook. I looked at him first. Not at her. At him. The boy I had raised in a two-bedroom house outside Columbus after his father got sick. The boy whose shoes I tied before school, whose college applications I proofread at midnight, whose first mortgage down payment I helped cover with money Robert and I had saved for our own anniversary trip. Daniel lifted his eyes for half a second, then looked away. That was when Ashley opened the folder. Everything is written down, she said. Meals, school pickup, Noah's allergy medicine, Emma's dance schedule, laundry instructions, screen time limits. We'll be gone 17 days. Italy has been booked for months. I stared at the printed pages. 17 days. 2 children. A house that was not mine. A schedule that began at 6:15 every morning and ended after both children were asleep. There were notes about watering the plants, sorting the mail, taking the trash cans to the curb, and making sure the white towels were washed separately. On the second page, in bold letters, Ashley had written, "No old-fashioned food." Daniel cleared his throat. "Mom, Ashley has been under a lot of stress. You're retired." It makes sense. Retired. That word had become their polite way of saying available. Since Robert passed 4 years earlier, my free time had slowly stopped belonging to me. At first, I was happy to help. I loved Emma's gap-toothed smile and the way Noah ran into my arms when I picked him up. From preschool, I loved being useful. But usefulness, I had learned, can become a cage when the wrong person holds the key. Ashley leaned back in her chair. "Honestly, Margaret, it's not like you have a job to go to." I folded my napkin once, then again, smoothing the edge with my thumb. My hands did not shake, though something inside me had gone very still. I smiled, not because it was funny, and not because I agreed. I smiled because at 68 years old, I had finally heard exactly how they saw me. Not as Daniel's mother. Not as Robert's widow. Not as a woman with a life, a home, and a heart that still knew how to break. Just an empty space on their calendar. I pushed the folder gently back across the table. "I'll give you my answer tomorrow," I said. Ashley blinked, surprised that there was any answer to give. Daniel looked relieved, as if my calm voice meant everything would go their way. I stood, picked up my purse from the back of the chair, and walked to the door without another word. Outside, the March air was cold enough to sting my cheeks, and the porch light threw my shadow long across their driveway. I sat in my car for almost a minute, watching their dining room window glow warm and golden behind me. Then I drove home, placed my keys in the little ceramic bowl Robert had made in a pottery class years ago, and opened my address book. The next morning, I did not call Ashley. I called Ellen Brooks, the family attorney. By 8 o'clock that morning, I was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of black coffee going cold beside my hand. The house was quiet in the way old houses become quiet after the person who filled them is gone. Robert's reading chair still sat near the front window, angled toward the maple tree in the yard. His old Ohio State blanket was folded over the arm, exactly where he used to leave it on chilly mornings. For years had passed, but some mornings I still expected to hear him clear his throat from the hallway or ask if I had seen his glasses, even though they were usually sitting on top of his head. After he died, everyone told me to stay busy. So I did. At first, helping Daniel and Ashley felt like a blessing. Emma was only 4 then, all curls and questions, and Noah was still in diapers, reaching for me with sticky fingers and a smile that could soften the hardest day. I picked them up from preschool when Ashley had appointments. I stayed late when Daniel had meetings. I kept chicken noodle soup in my freezer because someone was always catching a cold. I learned the fastest route from my house to their subdivision, 17 minutes if the traffic lights were kind, 23 if they were not. In those early months, I told myself I was still needed. That helped. Need can feel a lot like love when you are grieving. But slowly, without anyone saying it out loud, my help became their expectation. Ashley stopped asking and started informing. Emma has dance at 4. Noah needs to be picked up by 3. We are having people over Saturday, so could you make that pasta salad everyone likes? She would send messages while I was at the grocery store, at church, even once while I was sitting in the waiting room for my own eye appointment. If I hesitated, the reply always came with a little sting. I thought you liked spending time with your grandchildren. Daniel never said it that sharply. He did not need to. He had a softer way of making me feel guilty. Mom, it would really help us out. Or, Mom, you know how Ashley gets when she is overwhelmed. Somehow her stress became my responsibility, and my loneliness became their convenience. I opened the pale blue folder I had brought home from their dining room table and spread the pages out in front of me. There were 7 pages. 7 pages for 17 days of my life, written as if my time were a public road anyone could drive across. On page 3, Ashley had listed meals for each night, including a note that said, "Please do not make casseroles. The kids need fresh options." I stared at that sentence longer than I should have. I had raised Daniel on casseroles, soup, roast chicken, peanut butter sandwiches cut into triangles, and whatever I could make stretch until payday. He had grown tall and strong on the food Ashley now treated like an embarrassment. On page 5, she had written, "Do not let Margaret rearrange anything." Not Grandma. Not Mom. Margaret. I touched the paper lightly, as if it might explain itself. Then I looked around my kitchen, at the framed school pictures on the refrigerator, the crayon drawing Emma had made of me with purple hair, the little clay turtle Noah had given me for my birthday. I loved those children. That was the hardest part. Love had made me easy to use. At 9:15, Ellen Brooks answered her office phone herself. Her voice was warm, practical, familiar. She had handled Robert's estate after the funeral and had sent me a Christmas card every year since. "Margaret," she said, "is everything all right?" I looked at the folder, then at Robert's empty chair. "No," I said calmly, "but I think it is about to be." I drove to Ellen Brooks's office just after lunch, with the pale blue folder on the passenger seat like evidence from a life I had been too slow to examine. Her office was on the 2nd floor of a brick building near downtown Columbus, above a bakery that always smelled of cinnamon rolls and coffee. Robert used to joke that no one could make a hard legal decision with sugar in the air. I almost smiled at the memory, then looked down at Ashley's folder and felt the smile leave my face. Ellen greeted me herself, wearing a navy blazer and the same silver glasses she had worn at Robert's estate meeting. She did not rush me. She did not fill the silence. She simply poured me a cup of tea, sat across from me, and waited until I was ready. I placed the folder between us. "My daughter-in-law gave me this last night," I said. "She and Daniel are going to Italy for 17 days. They expect me to stay at their house and take care of everything." Ellen opened the folder carefully, as if the pages might bruise. I watched her expression change as she read. It was not dramatic. Ellen was not a dramatic woman, but her mouth tightened when she reached the page about laundry. Her eyebrows lifted when she saw the school pickup schedule. When she turned to the page labeled Household Rules, she paused for a long moment. "Did she ask you to do this?" Ellen said. "No," I answered. "She told me." Ellen looked up. "And your son?" I folded my hands in my lap. "He said it made sense because I am retired." There it was again, that word, pressed flat until it no longer meant years of work behind me, but emptiness ahead of me. Ellen leaned back in her chair. "Margaret, this is not a small favor. This is full-time caregiving, transportation, household management, and overnight responsibility for 2 minors." I nodded, though hearing it stated so plainly made something ache behind my ribs. For years, I had let them call it helping. Helping sounded warm. Helping sounded grandmotherly. Helping did not sound like waking at dawn in another woman's house, packing school lunches, remembering allergy medicine, managing homework, washing sheets, signing reading logs, and sleeping lightly because a child might need water at 2 in the morning. Ellen turned another page. "Do you have temporary medical authorization for the children?" "No written emergency contacts?" "Only what Ashley typed here. Permission from both parents for you to make decisions if something happens while they are out of the country?" I shook my head. Ellen removed her glasses and set them on the desk. "Then they are asking you to carry responsibility without giving you authority." I looked toward the window, where cars moved slowly along the street below. That sentence settled over me with a cold kind of clarity. Responsibility without authority. That was not just the folder. That was the last 4 years. Pick up the children, but do not question the schedule. Cook dinner, but do not season it your way. Come over when we call, but do not expect to be included when plans are made. Love the grandchildren, but do not forget your place. I thought of the note about old-fashioned food. I thought of Ashley saying, "It is not like you have a job." I thought of Daniel lowering his eyes while his wife handed me 17 days of unpaid work. Ellen slid the pages back into the folder. "What do you want to do?" she asked. It was such a simple question that I nearly cried, because no one in Daniel's house had asked me that in years. I looked at my wedding ring, still on my finger after 41 years of marriage, and remembered Robert telling me once that kindness without boundaries turns into permission. I had not understood him then. I understood him now. "I want to protect my home," I said. "I want to protect my time. And I want to make sure no one can quietly arrange my life for me." Ellen nodded once. "Then we start with your documents." She pulled a yellow legal pad from her drawer. For the first time since Ashley slid that folder across the table, I felt the ground beneath my feet become steady again. That afternoon in Ellen Brooks's office, we began with the simple things people ignore until someone else tries to take control of them. My will, my bank accounts, the deed to my house, the small life insurance policy Robert had left behind, the emergency contact listed at my doctor's office. Each document felt ordinary when Ellen placed it on the desk, but together they made a map of my life, and I realized how many doors I had left unlocked simply because I trusted my family not to walk through them. Daniel still had a spare key to my house. Ashley knew where I kept the folder with Robert's papers. Their names were still written in places I had not looked at since the months after the funeral, when grief made every form feel heavier than it was. Ellen did not tell me what to do. She asked questions, and each question opened another drawer in my memory. "Has Daniel ever pressured you about selling the house?" she asked. I started to say no, then stopped. There had been little comments. Not pressure exactly, but seeds. "This place is a lot for one person, Mom. You could get a nice condo closer to us. Ashley worries about you being alone." At the time, I had heard concern. Sitting there with Ashley's folder in front of me, I heard something else. Convenience. I thought back to the Sunday before Christmas, when Daniel had stood in my hallway looking at the staircase with a measuring tape in his hand. He said he was checking whether a chair lift could fit someday, just in case. Ashley had walked through my kitchen touching cabinet handles and saying, "This house has great bones." I had made hot cocoa for everyone and pretended not to notice how she opened the pantry, the laundry closet, even the small room where Robert had kept his tools. Later that night, Daniel told me they were only trying to plan ahead. "You know, Mom, nobody wants you to end up in some facility." He said it gently, the way he always said things that were not gentle at all. That was the hardest part about Daniel. Ashley's sharpness was easy to recognize. Daniel's silence was not. His silence wore the face of a tired son, a busy husband, a man trying to keep peace in his home. But peace, I was beginning to understand, had been purchased with my obedience. He had not shouted when Ashley insulted me. He had not corrected her when she reduced my life to empty hours. He had simply looked down at his plate and let her words sit there between us, hot and ugly, until I was the one expected to swallow them. I signed the first set of papers with a steady hand. Ellen updated my emergency contacts, naming my neighbor, Ruth Alvarez, who had brought me soup after my cataract surgery and never once made me feel like a burden. Then we discussed my house. I owned it outright. Robert and I had paid off the mortgage 2 years before he passed, celebrating with grocery store cupcakes and coffee at the kitchen counter. Daniel knew that. Ashley knew that too. I looked at Ellen and asked, if I wanted to sell it, could anyone stop me? "No," she said. "It is yours." Such a small sentence. It is yours. I had spent so long being generous with my time, my money, my kitchen, my car, my weekends, my holidays, that ownership almost sounded impolite. Ellen slid a business card across the desk. "This is a real estate agent I trust. You do not have to call her, but you should know your options." I put the card in my purse. On the drive home, my phone lit up with a message from Ashley. "Need your answer by dinner. Flights are non-refundable." I read it at a red light, then set the phone face down on the passenger seat. For the first time in years, her urgency did not become mine. I did not answer Ashley's message right away. I drove home slowly, taking the long way past the elementary school where I used to work. Before retirement, past the playground where I had once watched Daniel run himself breathless in a red jacket Robert bought on clearance. The building looked smaller than I remembered. Most things do, when you have spent years carrying them in your heart. When I pulled into my driveway, the afternoon light was lying across the porch steps, pale and quiet. I sat in the car with my hands on the steering wheel and let the silence settle around me. Then my phone rang. Daniel. I watched his name glow on the screen until it stopped. A minute later, Ashley called. I let that call stop too. By 6:30, I had washed the cup from my morning coffee, watered the fern in the living room, and placed Ellen's business card beside the telephone. I was not avoiding them. I was simply no longer running toward the sound of their need. At 7, Daniel knocked on my front door. Not rang the bell. Knocked, the way he did when he wanted to seem gentle. Ashley stood behind him in a tan coat, holding the pale blue folder against her chest. Her smile was tight. "Margaret," she said, stepping inside before I invited her. "We were worried." "You did not respond." Daniel kissed my cheek, but his eyes moved past me, scanning the living room as if checking whether something had changed. Maybe something had. Maybe I had. I offered coffee. Ashley declined. Daniel accepted, then did not drink it. We sat in my living room, Robert's chair between us like a quiet witness. Ashley placed the folder on my coffee table. "We really need to finalize this tonight," she said. "The car service comes at 5 in the morning on Friday." "I have a few questions first," I said. Daniel rubbed his forehead. Ashley's smile thinned. "Questions? If I am responsible for Emma and Noah for 17 days, I need medical authorization, written permission from both parents, emergency contacts, insurance cards, and money for groceries, gas, and any unexpected expenses." Ashley stared at me as if I had spoken another language. "Margaret, they are your grandchildren." "Yes," I said. "That is why I am asking properly." Daniel shifted on the couch. "Mom, can we not make this so formal?" "You are leaving the country," I said. "That is formal." For a moment, no one spoke. Ashley stood abruptly and said she needed air. She walked out to the front porch, closing the door almost all the way behind her. Daniel looked tired. Not cruel, not innocent, just tired in the convenient way that allowed him to let other people do the hard parts of his life. "Mom," he said softly, "Ashley has been planning this for a long time." "So have I said. He blinked, not understanding. From the porch, Ashley's voice drifted through the narrow opening of the door. She must have thought the storm door and the evening air would cover her. "No, she is getting difficult," she said into her phone. "I know, but once she gets used to having them full-time, it will be easier." Daniel is already warming up to the idea. "We can talk her into selling this old place and moving into the basement. It would save us thousands, and honestly, she needs something to do." I looked at Daniel. The color drained slowly from his face. Ashley kept talking. "Free childcare is the only reason this trip works. I am not paying some stranger when Margaret is sitting over here alone every day." The words did not surprise me as much as I expected. Maybe because some part of me had already known. Maybe because disrespect has a sound, and after years of hearing it softly, the loud version only confirms the melody. Daniel stood, then sat back down. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I rose from my chair and walked to the door. Ashley turned when she saw me, phone still in her hand. For the first time since I had known her, she looked uncertain. I did not raise my voice. I did not mention the basement. I did not mention the word free. I only looked at the folder on my coffee table and said, "I think I have my answer now." I let Ashley and Daniel leave that evening without a scene. Ashley tried to explain, of course. She said I had misunderstood. She said people say things when they are frustrated. She said the basement was not a basement exactly, more like a private suite, even though I had seen that room before, with its concrete floor, one narrow window, and boxes of Christmas decorations stacked against the wall. Daniel stood beside her with his keys in his hand, looking at me the way he used to look when he had broken something as a boy and hoped I would forgive him before he had to admit what he had done. I did not give him that comfort. I only handed Ashley the pale blue folder and said, "You should take this with you." She held it like it had suddenly become heavier. After they drove away, I locked the front door and stood in the hallway, listening to the house settle around me. For years, I had been afraid of silence. That night, it felt honest. The next morning, I began moving through my life with the calm of a woman who had finally stopped asking permission. I called Ellen first and told her what I had heard. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Margaret, I think you know what to do." I did. I called the real estate agent whose card was still beside my telephone. Her name was Patricia Lane, and she arrived at 2 o'clock with a navy folder, sensible shoes, and a kind face that did not pity me. She walked through my house slowly, complimenting Robert's built-in bookshelves, the sunny kitchen, the well-kept yard, the maple tree out front. "This will sell quickly," she said. "Families love this neighborhood." Families. I almost laughed at the word, but instead I nodded and asked what needed to happen next. By 4:30, I had signed the listing agreement. By 5, Patricia had arranged for photographs. By 6, I had called a locksmith. Daniel's spare key had hung in his kitchen for years, right beside the calendar where Ashley wrote my name into empty spaces. That key would no longer open my door. The locksmith came the following morning. He was a young man with kind manners who called me ma'am and wiped his boots carefully before stepping inside. When he handed me the new keys, small and silver in my palm, I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Not revenge, not even satisfaction. Relief. After he left, I sat at my kitchen table and opened a yellow legal pad. At the top, I wrote, "Hours given freely." Then I began to count. School pickups, sick days, dentist appointments, dance rehearsals, grocery runs, overnight stays, emergency calls, entire weekends when Ashley and Daniel needed a break. I did not write the list because I planned to demand money. No amount could measure bedtime stories, soup made at midnight, tiny shoes tied in the rain, or the soft weight of Noah's head on my shoulder when he fell asleep after crying for his mother. I wrote it because Daniel needed to see what his wife had called nothing. By the time I finished, the number was more than 1,400 hours. I stared at it for a long while. 1,400 hours of my life, handed over piece by piece, until they mistook generosity for ownership. That evening, I called a retirement community in Asheville, North Carolina, one Robert and I had once visited on a fall trip through the Blue Ridge Mountains. It had walking trails, a library, a garden club, and small cottages with porches that faced the sunrise. They had one available. I took it. Then I packed Robert's blanket, Emma's drawing, Noah's clay turtle, and the parts of my life that still belonged to love, not obligation. By Thursday evening, most of my house no longer looked like a home where someone had been waiting to be needed. It looked like a place that had finally exhaled. The family photographs were wrapped in newspaper and packed into boxes. Robert's books were stacked in careful rows near the front door. The good china, the same set I had used for birthdays, Easter dinners, and all the meals Ashley was too busy to host, sat in a padded carton-marked kitchen. I did not take everything. I left the heavy dining table for staging, the guest room furniture, and the curtains Ashley once said made the living room look dated. Let a new family decide what belonged there. Patricia arranged for a small moving crew, and by sunset my life was sitting inside a truck headed south. I spent my last night in Columbus at Ruth Alvarez's house across the street. She made vegetable soup and did not ask questions I was not ready to answer. At 10 o'clock, my phone began lighting up. Ashley first, then Daniel, then Ashley again. I watched the screen flash on Ruth's kitchen table while she ladled soup into bowls. "You can answer," she said gently. "I know," I replied. I did not. By morning, the air had that gray March chill that makes every breath look like smoke. At 4:45, Ruth and I stood behind her living room curtains, looking across the street at my dark house. The for sale sign was already planted in the yard. A lockbox hung from the front door. On the porch, beneath the brass mail slot, I had taped a large white envelope with Daniel's name written across it in blue ink. At 5 minutes after 5, Ashley's white sport utility vehicle turned into the driveway. Its headlights swept across the empty windows like searching hands. She stepped out first, wearing travel clothes and sunglasses pushed on top of her head, even though the sun had not risen. Daniel got out more slowly. Emma climbed down from the back seat holding a stuffed rabbit, and Noah followed with his dinosaur backpack bouncing against his knees. Seeing the children made my throat tighten. None of this was their fault. They were sleepy and confused, bundled in jackets, trusting the adults to know where they were going. Ashley walked to the door and tried her old key. It did not turn. She tried again, harder, then looked back at Daniel. He took the key from her and tried it himself. For a moment, he simply stood there, staring at the lock as if the door had betrayed him. Ashley noticed the sign next. Even from across the street, I could see her body go still. She walked down the steps, read it, then spun toward Daniel with her hands raised in disbelief. Daniel did not answer her. He had seen the envelope. He peeled it from the door carefully, the way he used to remove bandages when he was small and afraid it would hurt. Ashley stood beside him as he opened it. I knew exactly what he was reading because I had written every word at my kitchen table the night before. Ashley said I did nothing. So I have decided to stop doing everything. I love Emma and Noah, and I always will. But love is not a contract, and grandmother is not another word for unpaid employee. I will not be moving into your basement. I will not be managed by your vacation schedule. I will not hand over my home, my time, or the rest of my life to make your household easier. The second page was the list. 1,400 hours. Dates. Appointments. Pickups. Sick days. Overnights. Every quiet favor they had stepped over without looking down. Daniel sank onto the porch step before he finished reading. Ashley grabbed the papers from his hand, scanned them, and looked up at the empty house. For the first time, she looked less angry than frightened. Not frightened of me. Frightened of what my absence was about to cost her. By the time Daniel called me that morning, I was already on Interstate 75 with Ruth driving behind the moving truck and my hands resting calmly on the steering wheel of my old blue Buick. The sun was just beginning to lift over the flat Ohio fields, turning the edges of the clouds a soft gold. My phone rang through the car speakers once, then stopped. Then again. I did not answer until I reached a rest area outside Cincinnati, where I parked beneath a bare sycamore tree and let the engine idle. When I finally picked up, Daniel's voice came through rough and small. "Mom, where are you?" I looked out at the highway, at the steady stream of cars carrying people toward lives that did not require my permission. "I am on my way to North Carolina," I said. Silence. Then Ashley's voice in the background, sharp with panic. "North Carolina? What does she mean, North Carolina?" Daniel lowered his voice. "Mom, this is extreme." I almost smiled. For years, extreme had meant me saying no. Extreme had meant me asking for notice. Extreme had meant me wanting Sunday afternoon to myself, or choosing not to drive across town in freezing rain because Ashley forgot to arrange pickup. Their emergencies had always been reasonable. My boundary was always the problem. "It is not extreme," I said. "It is decided." He exhaled hard. "The kids are upset. Emma is asking why Grandma is gone." That hurt. He knew it would. For a moment, I saw Emma on my porch with her stuffed rabbit, Noah rubbing his eyes beside the car. I closed my fingers around the steering wheel until the feeling passed. "Tell them Grandma loves them," I said. "Tell them we will make plans when their parents are ready to speak respectfully." Ashley took the phone then. She did not ask. She never asked. "Margaret, you cannot just disappear the morning we are leaving. Do you have any idea what this does to us?" There it was. Not what they had done to me. Not what their children had been dragged into. What my absence did to them. "I did not disappear," I said. "I left you a letter. A letter does not fix our flights, our hotel, or the money we spent. Neither did 7 pages of instructions fix the way you spoke to me." She went quiet for half a second, then recovered. "I said one thing out of frustration." "No," I said. "You said one true thing out loud. That was the difference." Daniel came back on the line. "Mom, please. Come home and we can talk." I looked at the road ahead, then at the small cardboard box on the passenger seat. Inside were Robert's blanket, Emma's drawing, Noah's clay turtle, and the key to my new cottage. "I am going home," I said. "Just not to the place you expected." I ended the call before he could answer. The rest of the drive felt long but clean, like airing out a room that had been shut for years. By late afternoon, the hills of North Carolina rose blue and gentle in the distance. Asheville greeted me with winding roads, brick storefronts, and mountains standing quietly beyond everything, old and steady and unimpressed by family drama. The retirement community sat just outside town, with white cottages, walking paths, and porches wide enough for rocking chairs. A woman named Carol met me with a welcome packet and a basket of muffins from the residents' baking club. She did not ask why I had come alone. She simply handed me the key and said, "We are glad you are here." My cottage was smaller than the house in Columbus, but sunlight filled the front room. There was a little kitchen with blue cabinets, a bedroom facing the trees, and a porch where I could hear birds settling into the evening. I placed Robert's blanket over the back of the couch. I set Emma's drawing on the refrigerator with a magnet. I put Noah's clay turtle on the windowsill. Then I sat on the porch as the sky turned lavender over the mountains. My phone buzzed again. Daniel. This time a message. We canceled the trip. Ashley is furious. I need to understand why you did this. I read it twice. Then I typed back, slowly and carefully. You do not need to understand why I left. You need to understand why I had to. For the first time in 4 years, no one was waiting for me to cook, drive, clean, explain, cover, forgive, or make someone else's life easier. The silence around me was not empty. It was mine. 3 days after I moved into the cottage in Asheville, Daniel called and said he wanted to come see me. He did not say Ashley wanted to come too, but I heard her voice in the background asking whether I had answered yet, so I knew. I told him Sunday afternoon would be fine, and I gave him the address of the community clubhouse instead of my cottage. My home was no longer a place people could enter carrying demands. That Sunday, I arrived early and chose a table near the window overlooking the garden. The mountains sat blue and quiet beyond the rooftops, and for once, my hands were not busy. I was not packing lunches, folding towels, checking a school calendar, or answering a message that began with "Can you just?" I had one folder with me, cream-colored and thin. Nothing like Ashley's pale blue command book. Mine held only copies. The originals were safe with Ellen. Daniel walked in first, looking older than he had the week before. Ashley followed in a black coat and oversized sunglasses, though the room was not bright. She looked around the clubhouse with the tight expression of someone searching for something to criticize. When her eyes found me, she removed the sunglasses slowly. "This place is nice," Daniel said, trying to sound normal. "It is," I said. Ashley sat without greeting me. Daniel remained standing for a moment, then lowered himself into the chair across from me. He looked at the folder in front of me and swallowed. "Mom, I am sorry," he said. The words were soft, but I had learned to listen for what came after an apology. Ashley looked at him quickly, as if sorry was not part of the plan. "We all got emotional," she said. Things were said. But leaving like that, putting the house up for sale, canceling everything without a conversation, it was humiliating. I looked at her for a long moment. "Yes," I said. "Humiliation is unpleasant." Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Ashley's mouth tightened. "That is not what I meant." "I know," I said. "That is why I said it." I opened my folder and placed the first page on the table. The number was printed clearly at the bottom. 1,418 hours. Daniel stared at it. Ashley looked away. "This is not an invoice," I said. "I am not asking you to pay me. I am asking you to look at what you called nothing." Daniel picked up the paper. His eyes moved down the list slowly. School pickups, sick days, overnights, grocery trips, dental appointments, dance rehearsals, emergency babysitting, weekends, holidays. The details were plain, and that made them heavier. There was no anger in the ink, just evidence. "Mom," he whispered. I did not realize. "No," I said. "You did not have to realize. I kept showing up anyway." Ashley crossed her arms. "Grandparents help. That is what families do." "Families ask," I said. "Families thank each other. Families do not plan to move a widow into a basement because it saves money." Her face changed. Daniel looked at her, then back at me. "You heard that?" he asked. "Every word." Ashley's confidence cracked for just a second. "It was just a thought. We were worried about you living alone." I smiled gently, and that seemed to unsettle her more than anger would have. "You were not worried about me being alone. You were worried I might start enjoying it." Daniel covered his face with one hand. When he lowered it, his eyes were wet, but I did not reach across the table to comfort him. That was new for both of us. "What happens now?" he asked. I took back the paper and placed it neatly in the folder. "What happens now is simple. I will be Emma and Noah's grandmother, not your backup plan. Visits will be arranged in advance. No overnight care unless I offer it. No keys to my home. No discussions about my money, my house, or where I should live. And when you speak to me, both of you will remember that I am a person before I am useful." Ashley looked toward the window, silent at last. Daniel nodded. Slowly. "I understand," he said. Maybe he did. Maybe he only understood what my absence had cost him. Either way, the boundary stood. When they left, Daniel hugged me carefully, like he was not sure he still had the right. Ashley gave a stiff goodbye and walked ahead to the parking lot. I watched them go, then stepped outside into the cool mountain air. The garden path curved toward my cottage, where Robert's blanket waited on the couch and the evening sun warmed the porch boards. I walked home slowly, carrying nothing that did not belong to me.